All right. So today we're diving into something, honestly, a little unnerving.
Yeah,
What happens to the Justice Department if Trump wins a second term?
it's a big one.
It's a big one,
Right.
right? And we're going to be basing this deep dive on a recent New York Times article
Okay.
by Emily Bazelon and Mattathias Schwartz.
Mm-hmm.
And they interviewed 50 legal experts for this.
Wow.
Judges, attorneys general,
Yeah.
people who've served under every president since Reagan.
Yeah, this was not just a quick phone call.
No.
These were some serious, in-depth interviews.
And what I found, I mean, one of the things I found so interesting about this is that Trump has actually said what he would do.
Yeah.
He's publicly said he wants to go after his enemies,
Mm-hmm.
and he's named them
Right?
Biden, Harris.
Outright.
And I mean,
He has.
this isn't just offhand remarks.
No.
This is on social media. It's at rallies.
Yeah. And that's what's so unsettling about it is that we're not working off conjecture here.
Right.
This is his own words. And if you look back at 2016,
Mm-hmm.
Lock Her Up was kind of like the early version of this.
Yeah, it's like we've seen this playbook before.
Right.
But now he's claiming he's the victim
Exactly.
of a witch hunt by the Biden administration.
And that's what I find so interesting is that when you really look at it, there's no evidence
Right.
that Biden has interfered.
And Biden appointed Merrick Garland
Right.
as Attorney General,
Which
who is like the opposite of a partisan hack.
very careful,
Right.
methodical.
Just hold it
And
back.
then on top of that,
Yeah.
Garland appoints a special counsel,
Yeah.
not just for the documents case, but for January 6th as well.
He appointed a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden.
Exactly.
Like, if this was truly a witch hunt,
Where is the witch hunt?
where is the witch hunt?
Yeah.
It just doesn't hold water. But
Yeah.
but it does raise this larger question of, how vulnerable is the Justice Department
Right.
to a president who may not feel the same way about not interfering?
Well, structurally,
Yeah.
the Justice Department is part of the executive branch.
Right.
So the Attorney General reports to the president.
Right.
So, I mean,
But I thought there was this like long-standing tradition
there was.
after Watergate
Absolutely.
of respecting the DOJ's independence.
Huge effort to separate that
Yeah.
because nobody wanted to be seen as doing a Nixon,
Right.
you know?
So are you saying then that Trump kind of threw that out the window?
I mean, just think about how he went after Jeff Sessions,
Right.
his own AG, just for recusing himself from the Russia investigation.
Which he had to do legally.
Yeah, he had to.
And then there's Comey.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the head of the FBI
Who he fires
fires him.
because Comey won't pledge loyalty to him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like,
Personal.
these aren't just one-offs.
These are patterns.
It's a pattern of behavior.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the firings.
Right.
He also tried to get the Justice Department to investigate his opponents,
Yes.
even when they said, we don't have anything.
You're right. And that's not theoretical.
Yeah.
We have a track record here.
Right.
There are reports that he was pressuring the DOJ to investigate Hillary Clinton
Right.
to try to get them to declare the 2020 election fraudulent.
And there was no evidence.
He was practically begging them to push back,
Yeah.
to say no.
It's almost like he was daring them to push back.
Right.
And what happened? We saw a mass exodus
Oh, really?
of high-level officials
Wow.
who just refused to carry out what they felt were unethical or illegal orders.
That's wild.
It is.
So you're saying if his own people are already doing that,
Imagine
if he gets a second term and he can appoint everyone?
Well, and that's what this New York Times article
Yeah.
really gets into, is they found that 42 out of the 50 experts that they interviewed
Okay.
believe that a second Trump term would threaten the Justice Department's independence.
Okay, but was this just
Well,
a bunch of liberals
no.
with an axe to grind?
This was across the political spectrum.
Oh, wow.
The article actually quotes a conservative legal expert who served in the George W. Bush administration,
Okay, so this is someone who's been around the block.
who said there is a concrete risk that Trump would use law enforcement for personal and political gain.
Oh, my God.
And he said that this was the biggest threat to the rule of law that he had seen in his lifetime.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
And it makes you think back to all the things we just talked about.
Right.
It's not just talk.
It's not theoretical.
These are real things that happen.
Exactly. And we're going to get into those
Yeah.
because I think it's really important to lay those out so people can see.
Yeah.
Because it paints a very clear picture of how Trump views and uses the justice system.
Okay, so let's get into that then.
It's like he sees it as a weapon
Right.
instead of this institution that deserves respect.
And some of the things that he did, you almost have to be like, wait a second.
Right.
Can't even do that.
And that's the thing, is some of it was kind of in this gray area.
Okay.
Or there was precedent, but he was really bending the rules.
Right.
Like take firing Comey, for example.
Okay.
Presidents can fire the FBI director.
Right, but it's the context.
It's the content.
Comey's leading the Russia investigation, and Trump basically goes on TV and says, yeah, I fired him because of that.
Exactly. It's that disregard for the norms. That's so worrying.
And then there was the whole thing with Robert Mueller
Oh, yeah.
trying to get him fired.
The special counsel who was investigating the Russian interference in the 2016 election.
Right. Didn't he try to get him fired like multiple times?
Multiple times. And while he wasn't ultimately successful, in removing Mueller completely, the pressure that put on the Justice Department
Right.
really chipped away at the idea of an independent investigation.
And we can't forget about his appointments.
Right.
Like appointing Jeff Sessions as Attorney General when he knew Sessions had already criticized the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, that was very calculated.
Yeah.
And then when Sessions recuses himself like he was legally obligated to,
Right.
Trump turns on him.
It's almost funny if it wasn't so scary.
Right.
And then there's William Barr.
Barr was a turning point when he was appointed Attorney General because he consistently took actions to protect Trump and his allies.
Right.
I mean, remember when he misrepresented the Mueller report findings?
Oh, yeah.
Or intervened in the Roger Stone and Michael Flynn cases?
Who were both convicted of crimes
Exactly.
related to Russia.
It was at that point that the Justice Department really seemed to become a tool for personal gain.
So if that was his first term, what are legal experts saying about what he might do in a second term?
Well, they lay out some concerning possibilities in this article.
Okay.
One is he could just stack the DOJ with loyalists.
Even more than he did.
Even more than he did.
How would he even do that?
He wouldn't necessarily need to fire people. He could just wait for positions to open up naturally
Oh.
and then fill them strategically.
He could just control it from the inside out.
Exactly. Things like Attorney General, U.S. attorneys, the heads of different departments.
Right.
These are all really powerful positions.
And then there's this whole thing about presidential immunity
Oh, yeah.
that we were talking about before.
The Supreme Court ruled that presidents have really broad immunity from prosecution.
So he could just do whatever he wants.
It's a little more nuanced than that, but it definitely raises concerns
Okay.
that a president might feel emboldened to act knowing that the legal repercussions might not be as strong.
That's terrifying.
And then don't forget about pardons.
Oh, right.
Remember he issued a bunch at the end of his first term?
He did?
He could do that even more aggressively in a second term.
Could he pardon himself?
He could, and he's even suggested that before.
Would that even hold up?
It's never been tested in court.
I feel like we would have a constitutional crisis on our hands.
Absolutely.
So he's stacking the DOJ. He's got this broad immunity. He's wielding these pardons.
It's a lot.
Is there anything that can stop him?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
The article goes into a few potential checks on his power, but it also highlights how fragile those guardrails might be.
So they might not even work.
That's the concern. For example,
Mm-hmm.
Congress has the power to investigate,
Mm-hmm.
to impeach a president,
Right.
but that only works if they actually use that power.
Oh.
And if one party controls the White House and Congress and they don't want to hold their own accountable?
Which we kind of saw during the first impeachment.
Exactly.
Like a lot of Republicans were like, yeah, he did it,
Right.
but they weren't going to actually remove him.
They weren't going to remove him.
So what if they're from different parties? Like, can they do anything?
They could launch investigations, hold hearings, issue subpoenas,
Right.
but a president can just stonewall them.
Which he did a lot in his first term.
He ignored subpoenas. He refused to let his staff testify.
Didn't he basically say that Congress had no right to question him at all?
He did, and if he did that again, it could lead to a constitutional crisis.
So if Congress can't stop him, what about the courts?
Well, the courts have a role to play.
Okay.
But remember, Trump appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court,
Right.
and they might be more sympathetic to arguments about executive power,
Okay.
less likely to step in.
So Congress may be a no-go. The courts might not be able to stop him. Is there any hope?
There is one more potential check on presidential power we haven't talked about.
What's that?
Public opinion?
You mean like people getting mad enough to actually do something?
Exactly.
Okay.
If a president took actions that were seen as corrupt or authoritarian,
Yeah.
there could be outrage protests, calls for impeachment.
So it'd have to be big.
It would have to be big. But remember, Richard Nixon was arguably more powerful than Trump.
That's true.
And he was brought down by a combination of public pressure and the threat of impeachment.
Okay. But Nixon didn't have to deal with social media
That's true.
and the news being as crazy as it is.
That's a really good point.
It's hard to even know it's real anymore.
And the article really emphasizes that we're in uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
Trump has pushed the boundaries of presidential power further than we've ever seen.
So what happens to these investigations if he wins a second term?
That's the big question, and it's what we'll get into next.
So we're back and we're tackling this what if.
Right.
What happens to these investigations if Trump actually wins a second term?
It's really stepping into the unknown, because we've never had a president who was facing multiple indictments while running for re-election.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
So if he wins, can he just make these investigations disappear?
He could pressure the Justice Department to drop the charges.
Wouldn't that cause like a firestorm?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, isn't that a blatant abuse of power?
Of course it is. But again, we go back to what we were talking about before.
Right.
What if he's got a bunch of loyalists in the DOJ who are going to do what he says no matter what?
And then there's the whole pardon thing.
Exactly.
Could he pardon himself?
He could, and he's even said he might.
I mean, has that ever even happened before?
It's never been ruled on by the Supreme Court.
We would be in a full-blown constitutional crisis.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not even just about these specific cases. It sets a precedent.
Yeah. What's to stop the next guy?
Right. If a president can just erase the consequences of his actions.
Okay, so that's if he wins, what if he loses?
If he loses in 2024, the investigations and the trials would probably keep going.
Okay.
But the political landscape would be different, obviously,
Right.
because now he's not the president anymore, so he can't claim it's a witch hunt with as much power.
Right. But he's still got a lot of supporters.
He does. And that's the thing, is this has created such deep divisions in our country
Right.
that no matter what happens, it's hard to imagine those going away anytime soon.
So no matter what happens, it's going to be bad.
There's going to be fallout, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're either looking at potential constitutional crises or just this deeply divided country.
This whole thing really put Merrick Garland in a tough spot.
The Garland dilemma, as they call it in the article.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't investigate Trump, he's accused of not doing his job.
Yeah.
Of letting a powerful person off the hook.
And it sets a bad precedent, like presidents are above the law.
Exactly. But if he does investigate, he's accused of playing politics.
Right.
Of trying to sway the election.
You can't win.
You can't win, and especially not with Trump, who loves to play the victim.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about this quote from the article.
Okay.
It's from a former Trump official who said that Trump generally made the right decisions.
Oh, boy.
After everything we just talked about,
Yeah.
this person still thinks that he was in the right.
That is very concerning.
It's like how much damage has already been done.
Right. Can we come back from this?
Can the country survive this?
I mean, that's the underlying question here, right?
Yeah.
Can our democracy handle this level of pressure?
It's a scary thought.
It is. It is.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Wow.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more, check out that New York Times article.
Yeah, it's a really important read.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.